Hello and welcome to Uncommon Law, my podcast about true stories from my life experience of over 50 years as a lawyer and trial judge. This is a look at the law from the inside out, stuff they don't teach in law school. This is Judge Rudy, retired Justice of the New York State Supreme Court. Back in the 1980s, I came upon a whole treasure trove of Tunisian guys who became clients and acquaintances. One of them, Mohammed, was working in a restaurant, Italian restaurant, and he was a chef in that restaurant, and the restaurant had a reputation for phenomenal food, and the guy who owned it was a connoisseur of Italian food. He knew better, and the food was really great. Problem was, the guy who owned it was going to go to jail, and he had to close the place. And Mohammed was looking for a job. Coincidentally, at the same time, my friend Gino was opening his restaurant on the Upper East Side called the Racing Club, and he needed a chef. And I made the match. I did a matchmaking job here, and it was a brilliant match. Now, Tunisians, to get back to Tunisians, Mohammed was one, and Tunis itself is only 90 miles off the coast of Sicily. So they're like next-door neighbors, very much akin to Cuba and Florida. And the great Carthaginian general Hannibal, who famous for marching his elephants over the Alps and into the Italian peninsula, where he was victorious. Anyway, Hannibal came from Carthage, which was the ancient name for Tunis. And today, many Tunisians speak Italian, and they all go shopping. They're very much aware of shopping. They take ferries across the 90 miles, and they go shopping in Sicily for Italian clothes and shoes, etc., or pharmaceuticals and various and sundry things. And also, many of them speak Italian because they get Italian television, Italian state television, RAI, R-A-I, national TV network, pipes into Tunisia. So a lot of Tunisians are quasi-Italians, very much like Canadians and Mexicans on the border, our borders. And also another influence from the old days was Tunisia, or Carthage at that time, was the place where the ancient Romans would pension off legionnaires after so many years in service. They would give them farmland there after they conquered it. So it's a very interesting culture that goes on there, and nice people. In any event, Mohammed, learned to cook from an Italian guy, Lino. I never knew Lino's last name, but I knew about him because he worked at another restaurant in Manhattan, and Lino was a phenomenal chef with a big reputation. And Lino learned his trade, or applied his trade, developed it, as a shipboard chef on the Italian lines. He made crossings in the Atlantic, and they had very high standards of cuisine and service on those ships, and that's where Lino learned, and he passed his knowledge on to Mohammed, who was, by the way, a star student. He was really, really good. And he came to the racing club, and he was a raging success. Well, it was no surprise because, first of all, he was smart. Second of all, he was a talented chef. He was hardworking. He was personable. He was an engaging guy, clean as a whistle. Everything about him was first class. And he made excellent sauce. Now, my mother, who was an excellent chef, never cooked from a recipe in her life. You could bring 20 people home unannounced, and my mother would, working out of whatever was in the refrigerator, would prepare a number of courses and a meal, and everybody would be licking their fingers. And my mother never looked at a recipe in her life. But when you took my mother to any Italian restaurant, she was highly critical of the restaurant food, especially when she saw the prices. You know, what, $25 for a dish of macaroni? What are they, crazy? And she was highly critical. Well, I told Mom, I said, Mom, we're going to go to Gino's restaurant, and we're going to told her about Mohammed. We're going to have a dish of pasta with his filetto sauce made from the fillet of the tomatoes. It's a light tomato sauce. Okay, yeah, you know. We got there. We ate. We ordered the filetto sauce, and my mother gives me an elbow, calls me, close, and whispers to me, find out how he makes this sauce, will you? I said, okay, Mom, I will. She says, get the recipe. I said, well, you never read a recipe? No, well, just find out how he makes it, then I'll make it. And she really, really loved it. Now, that was the ultimate compliment. He was really, really good. Mo had many, many friends all over the place. A lot of them operated and worked cafes and restaurants as waiters, chefs, what have you. and he had numerous so-called cousins. Now, some of them were actually his cousins, but most of them were Tunisian-style cousins. They're just good friends. And among that group of people were two brothers, Habib and Salah, otherwise known as Sal. And both of them worked at a very, very successful Italian cafe, Cafe Luca, located on Bleecker Street in Greenwich Village, just west, just a few feet west of Avenue of the Americas, or as New Yorkers know it, 6th Avenue. And it was right near Our Lady of Pompeii Church. And that little square right there at 6th Avenue and Bleecker Street is kind of, is very, very busy, sort of like the Times Square of Greenwich Village. And Cafe Luca was is big and successful place, and was owned by a man named Orazio, his first name. And Orazio was from Lucca, the Italian city, which is a medieval city. It's walled. It's very, very beautiful. It's in Tuscany. And Lucca is famous for a number of things. First of all, its beauty, its physical beauty, and historic architecture. But that whole district is famous for olive oil and marble. Some of the best marble in the world comes from right there around Lucca. And finally, and maybe most notable, is Lucca is the home birthplace of Giacomo Puccini, the composer who wrote so many Italian operas, including Madame Butterfly, Tosca, La Boheme, Turandot. I mean, this guy wrote operas great as hits. And he used to sit in a little cafe in Lucca and write the operas. Well, Orazio operated the place for years, and he was getting on in years, and he was thinking of retirement, and he sold the business to Habib and Sal, who were like sons to him. They were very, very good. They worked, and they showed up, and they operated the place. He put it in good hands, and they operated the place for the next few years. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years when the lease ran out. And when the lease ran out, the landlord, who was a bit of a vulture, he wanted the business for himself because it was very, very profitable. These guys not only had the regular Greenwich Village traffic, coffee house traffic, the hippies, the beatniks, and the young kids and everything else, but it was a regular stopping point for European tourists who were touring the city in chartered buses. The bus drivers would love to stop there. They got free food, etc., etc. Maybe they got a couple of bucks back, and they dropped off, take a break, and the European people could get authentic European type breakfast, croissants, what have you, fruit bowls, that sort of stuff. And any time of the day, they could get a nice meal there, and the buses could pull up because there was no parking right in front of the place. It was restricted. So it was a very profitable business. They did very, very well. So when the lease ran out, I was talking to the two brothers we become very friendly over the years, and they were my clients, and they were good guys. It was around 1998, and I had this notion, maybe we should open a cafe in Jackson Heights. And I talked to the two brothers, and the idea that I had in my head is I had to pick one of these guys as a partner. Both of them, we couldn't sustain it in Jackson Heights. It wasn't going to be a going business. We had to build a business, and it was going to take time. And Habib was married with 2 little daughters, and he was stable, very quiet, very, very nice, mild temperament, and well-mannered guy. And his brother Sal, who was very bright, and he was a bachelor and dating a few girls, and he was much looser personality, a little carefree guy. And I picked Habib in the long run on the basis of him being, a little more stable than I thought Sal. Although Sal went on to do very, very well as a manager for Balducci's, the famous Italian specialty food shop, and he made himself a nice career, and he's a lovely guy. Picking Habib turned out to be a big mistake, but that's the rest of the story. So we opened a cafe. Habib agreed, and Habib had most of the equipment that we needed. Chairs, the macchinette, the Italian espresso machine, beautiful brass machine, pots, pans, you name it, he had it. And everything but tables, which we would have to get and make up ourselves. And okay, we decided to call the place Cafe Greco for a couple of reasons. First of all, it was in Jackson Heights, and I had been a community leader, and my law practice was there. My law office was right there, 2 blocks away from the place that we picked. And also because Cafe Greco in Rome is one of the most famous, if not the most famous cafe in the world. It was established in 1668. That was almost 100 years before America became a country. And in Rome, it had a very fashionable address on Via Condotti. Via Condotti is the street where all the Italian designers, Armani, etc., they all have boutique showrooms there, sort of like Madison Avenue in Manhattan. And it's at the foot of the Spanish Steps, right near the Trevi Fountain, Piazza di Spagna, they call it, and Via Condotti. And it's a very, very famous place. You go there today, I don't know what cappuccino costs, probably about $25, but it's very, very fancy, very, very beautiful place. It still exists. It's very prestigious and had a great history, including the fact that somewhere back in the turn of the century, Buffalo Bill and his Wild West show, Buffalo Bill stopped there and used to go there regularly when he went to Italy, and they did their Wild West shows in Italy. So we named it Cafe Greco, and it was a nice spot. It was a double storefront on 37th Avenue, which is a busy street, just near the Jackson Heights Post Office. And it was on the ground floor with a lot of other stores, who were the first floor of a 6-story building. The next 5 floors were apartment houses, and it ran the entire block on 37th Avenue with entrances on 79th Street and 78th Street. And the site was very good, but it had a particular problem. And the problem was a venting problem because it was a residential building, and we were on the first floor, topped by 5 stories of apartments running the whole block. In order to vent the place and to vent the kitchen properly and legally, we had to run a vent. If we put a stove in the premises, we had to put a vent that went down to the basement, across the entire basement to the back of the building, up 1 floor again to ground level, out to the exterior, up to the top of the building, 5 or 6 stories up, and then up to the roof with an extended chimney, for venting all the fumes and everything from the ovens, which was an enormous expense. And Habib and I, neither of us had the ambition or the money to afford that. So we went right away to plan B, which was, all right, we can get by serving soup from an electric tureen, salads, you don't have to cook, pizzette, which are little individual pizzas that come, you can buy them frozen, you thaw them out, and all you have to do is put them in either a microwave or a toaster oven, and they're very, very good if you buy the good quality stuff. And we would get pastries made, pastry and cake and desserts made by Bindi. Now, Bindi was a big industrial Italian bakery from Milan, and Bindi would make these wonderful, wonderful desserts, cakes, torts, pastries, and flash freeze them in Italy, throw them on a jet plane, and ship them to the United States, flash frozen. And they would stay frozen where they were sold and distributed. Now, Habib had a friend when he was at Cafe Luca. He and Sal were at Cafe Luca. They were the second customers of the salesman for Bindi, who was a Greenwich Village guy, an Italian-American kid who went around all the coffee shops in the village selling Bindi pastry that was packed on dry ice in the trunk of his car. And Sal was, and Habib had a nice relationship because they were like the second customers that he ever had. We went to visit him, Habib and I, at his office in Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, where his office was in the corner of a giant, expansive, frozen food warehouse. It was gigantic, the size of like an airplane hangar. Probably was a converted airplane hangar anyway. And in that office, he had a big office, and on the wall, he had this young man who sold the stuff from the back of his car, had a map of the United States. And the map of the United States contained red pins for all his customers. Well, if you looked up at that map, the United States was covered. It looked like the United States, it was covered with red pins. It looked like the United States had measles. It was phenomenal. And this guy started out, as I said, from the back of his car, selling from the trunk of his car. And here he was selling all over the United States. And to this day, and we're talking from 1998 until now, it's over 25 years, you go anywhere in any fancy Italian restaurant, and they're serving Bindi desserts. They're recognizable if you know what you're looking at. And desserts and very successfully right across the country. It's a giant operation. So now it comes time to get the place ready. And we got the place. I think I got 1 month's free rent. I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2 months, July and August. We had Orthodox Jewish landlords. Were very nice guys. I had a nice relationship with them, and we were always on the square. And I always maintained a very good relationship with them because we paid the rent all the time, and we did what we were supposed to do, and we were very reasonable, and they were very kind. So we did. We planned. I think maybe we got the lease at the end of July, and we planned to open up around Labor Day. Well, the problem was right in July. First thing was Habib was going to Tunisia to visit his family, take his wife and kids, and he was gone for a week, supposedly for a week, while I was there cleaning up and everything else. And I found out that Habib was a problem. First of all, when we went to pick up the furniture and transfer it or anything like that, Habib couldn't drive the truck. Second of all, he was no good at heavy lifting. He was too heavy for light work and too light for heavy work. He was very good at watching the World Cup on television while I was doing all the work with all the different stuff around the store. And he went to Tunis with his wife and kids for a week. And lo and behold, I get a phone call. I'm not coming home for another week when that first week was over. I said, why not? I missed the plane, Rudy. He missed the plane? That was nonsense. He was staying for another week. All right, I let it go because we're not opening up, and I'm keeping busy doing stuff, and we still have time to get everything. And the last thing we had to get, I got the place painted, and it was sort of like my version of the Sistine Chapel because the place had an embossed tin ceiling, old-fashioned tin ceilings, with a fancy design, a lot of scroll work, and I decided to paint it. We're going to paint it terracotta red or reddish brown. And I went up there with a roller, and it was an ordeal, and it was hot. We had no air conditioning because we weren't going to buy air conditioning because we were going to wait until Labor Day when we opened up, when the air conditioners would all go on sale, and we can pick something up. So the place was sweltering hot. Here I am in August on a ladder trying to paint the tin ceiling. Oh, wonderful. The only problem is when you hit the tin ceiling with a paint roller, the ceiling would give. It wasn't tightly fastened. It would give back and forth. So it was very, very difficult. It was a real tough piece of work to press on that ceiling on a ladder and get the thing painted. And I put in a lot of hard work. That was my little Sistine Chapel, and I didn't do it upside down, but I might as well have been. And all the while I'm muttering, where is Habib when I need him? This guy is useless. He's in Tunis because he missed the plane. All right. Next comes the tabletops. We were dealing with a marble dealer, and the guy turned out to be useless. Yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, I'm going to get you this, this is the price, good stuff. We were going to get this Baltic brown, which was very economical kind of marble. It's a generic kind of marble that's around everywhere. And he couldn't deliver. And now here we are 2 days before the restaurant's supposed to open up. And I had to go to a Greek guy in Astoria who had a carpentry shop, and he made tabletops, and he did mass produce them. He cut a slab of plywood and glue formica around it. And so we ended up, instead of marble, we had formica. But the whole place looked beautiful because I really decorated it, and it was very authentic. It was very Italian. It was all tan with terracotta trim and the beautiful forest green coffee machine, all trimmed in brass, and beautiful Italian scenes we had on the wall, and all kinds of beautiful, beautiful pictures of Italy and things that I had collected over the years. It was really, really nice place. Then we had to hire the team to work the place. The agreement was Habib, he would be there in daytime and do a full day, and I would do the evenings. I would come, and he could go home to his wife and kids. And if there was an emergency or anything, I would come there in the morning. My office was only 2 blocks away. My house was a different direction, 2 blocks away. And we hired a barista, and the barista was another kid named Mohammed, no relation to the original Mohammed, a Tunisian kid, who was the son of Habib's best friend, Bob. And Mo was terrific. He was a nice young man. He was a terrific barista. We hired 2 Latinas for waitresses in the daytime and nighttime. We split shifts. And 2 gay guys, they were a couple, as waiters. And they were terrific. Jimmy and Bob, they were great. Except that periodically they would have to miss work because they would go to drag shows or drag balls as a team, as a couple. And the help became a problem. The last guy we hired was supposedly a so-called chef. He wasn't a chef. He was making salad and handing out the soup and heating up the pizza, the little individual pizzas and that sort of thing. His name was Taurino, and he was from Mexico. He was a lovely guy, Taurino, and a hardworking guy. But Taurino had a penchant for telling me in the middle of making a salad, we're out of lettuce, or oh, we need tomatoes, which would send me in the middle. I said, didn't you know this in advance? And you said, oh, and he would send me dashing across the street while he was in mid salad. I'd go to the nearest greengrocer to pick up whatever it was that we were missing at that particular time. And of course, we made the soup and everything else. Well, trouble started over the years. We operated the place for 2 years, and it was nothing but trouble. Tarino, we'll start with him. His wife was in Mexico and sent him a telegram of some sort telling him if he didn't come home to his wife and 3 kids, she was going to move in with the guy next door. So he had to leave. The 2 Latin waitresses used to argue among themselves about filling the salt shakers and refilling the sugar containers, etc., because if one left it after lunchtime, the other one wouldn't do it when she left at night to fill them up, in spite. That kind of nonsense. The 2 gay guys, they would go to the drag things every once in a while, but one of them, Jimmy, his sister died, and he needed time off. And then his other sister died, and he needed time off. And then a third sister died, and he needed time off. And that's when I found out he only had one sister. I said, Jimmy, will you let your sister rest in peace, please, and come to work? And one day, the pipes broke in the middle of the night. The steam pipes broke, and we would have to come in. I have to come in. Steam can do tremendous damage, and naturally they call me because I'm 2 blocks away. Habib lives out in Long Beach, and they call me, and there I am, 7 o'clock in the morning, trying to open the place and get the steam cleared and get the leak repaired. It was a major headache. It was like the Titanic, this thing. And Habib, then, unbeknownst to me, because we weren't making that much money. We were before our time in Jackson Heights. It may have been good in the village, but Jackson Heights wasn't really ready for a cafe at that particular time. Now there are 6 or 7 of them, and they're doing great, including one managed by one of the kids who helped me put the tabletops together. He was a preteen, and he and his little brother, the Maniaci brothers, I put them to work helping put the tabletops onto the bases. They were doing well, but at that time we were way, way ahead of our time, probably decades ahead of our time. And we had all different kinds of problems. I was in charge of cleaning the bathroom. Why? Because I wanted it kept clean to my standards, which was sparkling clean. We had one unisex bathroom. The windows, I had to clean the windows because I wanted them sparkling clean. So I developed a quick way of using a squeegee into hot water just mixed with ammonia and just throw that on the windows and scrape it right off, and the windows would sparkle. I was in charge of the seasonal decoration. Business is traditionally slow on Monday and Tuesday nights, so I instituted on Monday nights Poets Night, and on Tuesday nights Music Night. We had live music, so we had an open mic on Monday, and Poets Night was really good. We had serious poets. We had college professors. One of them was supposedly the poet laureate of Queens County. He was nominated by the borough president, and he was a poetry and English lit teacher. Phenomenal. And we had some other people that were professional poets, and they were very, very good. And then we had people from the neighborhood come in on the open mic, especially one guy who was very memorable. He would come in every week with a different poem, and he would be wearing a T-shirt with a superhero like Batman or Robin or Superman, Captain America, and his poem would be about the superhero. It was hilarious. It was really kind of funny. It was cute, and that helped on Monday night. Tuesday nights were great because I got music in there, and the music came from a friend of mine in the neighborhood. It's a lovely woman who's in Borough Hall now, Susie Tannenbaum, who did a master's thesis. Her master's thesis was on the subway musicians, and she did a brilliant job of it. And she was involved in community work with musicians, and she was my pipeline. And we had all kinds of music, all different kinds of music. And the problem, because we were in a residential building, was they could play 2 sets. We'd start them at 7 o'clock for 45 minutes. They'd take a half-hour break until 8:15, and then another set from 8:15 to 9 o'clock when we had to stop because the neighbors upstairs would complain about the noise, and we made an agreement we'd stop at 9 o'clock. In between the sets, I would feed the musicians, and I personally would pass the hat among the crowd, and we were always crowded unless it was a really bad weather event of some sort or another, and in which case I would pass the hat at intermission and after the second set and give the money to the musicians. And if we didn't have enough money, I would supplement, because it was an off night because of weather, I would supplement it out of the cash register, making sure that all those musicians went away well fed and well paid. And it paid off. When I ran for office, all of them came and performed 3 different concerts for me for free at fundraising concerts. And that's how I met my financial obligations of raising money for my city council campaign, which luckily failed. In any event, we go on, and the poets and the music, everything is good. Everybody made money except me. Now, the final straw, Habib took another job as a waiter. I understand he had to make money. He had a wife and 2 kids. I understand that. But he didn't tell me. And he would tell the waiters, if Rudy comes during the daytime, if Rudy comes, just tell him I just left. Well, I started feeling homicidal. I wanted to take him up to the roof to show him the skyline and then, have an accident. I said, well, I can't do that. The guy's got a wife and kids, and, this is the end. I can't do this anymore. I'm working, some days, 7 days a week, any kinds of long hours, and everybody made money. The landlords made money. The providers, all the provision people made money. Mohammed, we caught him stealing. He had a baby with one of the waitresses. They lived together. Then we found him stealing from the register. His father came in tears to Habib. Habib was in tears. We had to hire the kid back. I didn't want to hire him back. He's a crook. But we hired him back only to keep the peace. The whole thing got way, way out of hand. So we decided to sell, and we did. And finally, and it was a good thing. That was my experience, and I had great music in the place. I was in charge of the music. I had all kinds of music CDs, from opera, Italian pop, jazz, folk, you name it, pop music, rock, everything. And that was one of the nicest things about it. And the customers, of course. 25 years later, I still meet people who say they were there all the time, and they were there all the time. I didn't see them, and certainly we didn't see it in the cash register, but people have very, very fond memories because the place was really, really authentic, and it was a nice place. And many parts of it were pleasant. The people and dealing with the people. I don't want to forget one other problem that we had. We were missing soap from time to time from the unisex toilet that we had, and found out. Every time we had this elegant Chinese woman who would come all dressed up to the nines, sit down and have coffee. And every time she was there, when she left, the soap was missing. And we found out it was her, so we banned her from the place. And I used to run, as I said, a very, very clean place. And we had a health inspector. Health inspectors are another problem in restaurants. And this young lady was from originally of East Indian descent. And she came to Jamaica. She came from the island of Jamaica. And she inspected the place, and she said, I have to give you a violation. I said, why do you have to give me a violation? She says, the place is spotless. I understand that, she said, but I have to give you a violation. I'm going to give you a violation for no cover on the light bulb in the refrigerator. I said, why are you doing that? She said, because if I don't do it, my supervisors will say, you gave him a clean sheet, you probably never went there to inspect it. There's always something wrong. So she says, I always have to find something. And by the way, can I sit down here and do my paperwork? I have about 2 hours worth of paperwork. It was a slow day. I said, by all means. She said, this is the cleanest place I've ever been in. She says, and I love this place. I said, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Oh, no, she says, I'll buy the coffee. She says, I don't want anything. I want to be able to say I never took anything from anybody. I said, that's quite all right. I didn't mean it that way. She says, no, you passed. That's, beside the point. So I understand. So she did, and she sat there. Well, the whole experience was a real eye-opener. And for anybody else, the meeting and greeting and the music and everything else, the musicians, it was phenomenal. But for anybody else who has a notion or a fantasy about opening a restaurant, my advice is, as we say in Brooklyn, forget about it. Don't do it. It's just what you see is just the tip of the iceberg. And what's underneath the surface of the water is murder. It's a very, very tough business. And I have, after that, a newfound respect for anybody that runs a successful restaurant because it ain't easy. Thanks for listening. Come back next week for another episode of Uncommon Law, lessons they don't teach in law school. I'm Judge Rudy Greco. Court is adjourned.